In this week's Memes and Machines, we talked about business models of the future, why open source is changing the game for technology companies. We share our takes on why small agencies are way better than big agencies. We are moving into the era of the micro agency. We dive into influencer marketing, creator marketing. How do you brief creators correctly? Ben shares his top tips that no brand is doing right now to drive more sales. We talk about attribution and God knows what else.
Don't tell me you care about your data when you don't actually care about your data.
The point of the screen. If you're a brand approaching influencers and you recognize that they have influence, then don't abuse that relationship.
Abuse, strong word. I concur.
Sit back, grab a cold beverage from the fridge and relax, because you're now locked into the sounds of memes and machines.
This is Memes and Machines. It's good to see you both. How are you doing?
Great, cheers.
Good, thank you.
You're both so polite. I like how you were like,
I was waiting for Chris.
You go first, Chris.
I wasn't sure. I wasn't
That was
sure
very
either.
cute. I liked it. That was great. Chaps, I have a great topic for us to explore today. We usually dive in with some wild word like AI, artificial intelligence, the future. I'm going to start with business models, the evolving business models of the new world. So let me level set with you both. My view of the last 15 years is that social media democratized attention. It meant that this thing that we're all participating in, the attention economy, wasn't gatekept by the media, by publishers. It empowered individuals. And as a consequence of that, new business models emerged, new companies, the impact that it's had on society, political discourse, how we live, everything. Well, now we have a whole new wave of technological innovation. Largely at the forefront of this are things like the blockchain, artificial intelligence, more specifically generative AI, large language models, quantum computing. There are many things that are all coming together. And I think there will be a series of new business models that don't play by historic rules. A new world order will have to be written. So, Chris, I want to start with you. You went against the traditional agency model as a marketeer and decided you weren't going to build a giant team and you weren't going to manage lots of people. You were going to remove all the wastage that exists in a traditional agency and you were going to focus on outcomes and outputs and very dial in to leveraging technology to help you do that. Give me your view at A, on a personal level, then B, at a macro level, of how you think about business models of the future.
Well, it's all about friction points, as you said rightly, and that's what I identified because I worked at big agencies and I worked with the same clients that I do today. And constantly I was, monitoring them as both their account manager and then their marketing manager and then their business manager. I did sort of every role that is required within an agency to understand the full client relationship with that agency. And over time, I basically just started noting down all of the things that they would complain about or reasons that they would leave. And I basically called this like a Google Sheet file. And I started saying churn and burn. That's the sort of attitude that both agencies and clients have towards agencies, is that agencies hire lots of young people with marketing degrees to be account managers at very little money, but they have very little skill set and they're not the best at working directly with clients. So that was the identification point on a personal note that I made. But AI, as you said, is going to change a lot of this because account managers now can do creative deliverables given the fact that they have prompt engineering. So you don't need to have a graphic design or copywriting background or art direction background in order to actually serve clients with deliverables. So, it's a really mixed bag of who you need to be these days. Like, if you took me 10 years back into agency land and you said, what are the skill sets you need to succeed? They wouldn't look anything like they do in 2024.
Yeah, I agree. I'd go as far back as the last decade. If you think of social media being arguably one of the most valuable skills you can have as a marketeer, and
Yep.
social media is a broad term. Are you a creative? Are you an analyst? Are you a copywriter? You wear many hats, but I think one of the biggest value adds you can have in any marketing team or organization is being a conceptual creative. And to be an effective conceptual creative today, you need to know the world around you. You need to know what's happening. You need to be able to attach ideas. You need to know the in-jokes, speak the vernacular. You have to know formats. You have to pay attention. You have to study
So much
data.
stuff.
There's just so much. These are very different skills than the great people of Adland of yesteryear. The ones that would come out with cinematic, romantic, storylines. And I'm not saying I'm not saying those skills aren't valuable anymore, but they've certainly changed. Give me your view, and I want to go a bit more specific on technology. Give me your view on this emergence of open sourcing technology now, and Meta are at the forefront of this. Firstly, explain what's happening with Meta and open source, and then tell me how you're thinking about that in the context of new business models and how it impacts you.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like, I really didn't see it coming, honestly. Meta are on a serious redemption arc when it comes to releasing technology that's useful and empowering people at scale. So I'll give them that entirely. They pretty much put their money where their mouth is when it comes to releasing stuff that you'd otherwise have to pay an extraordinary fee for. And like, what I meant by saying like the different skill set 10 years ago is that I noticed that if you're at an agency of less than 20 people, you kind of have to wear every hat. And the larger you get, the more and more wings of the agency you get, like the PR team, the SEO team, the copywriting team, all of these other people. So then you become highly specialist at this one particular thing, but you don't have account management skills. You don't know most technology. You basically just do your stuff very, very good on a daily basis. And you work with dozens of clients and you're not really involved with much, but you're just doing the copywriting or you're just doing the SEO or you're just doing one of these things. Nowadays, it's like even at bigger agencies, everyone wears multiple hats. And if you're at smaller agencies, the more hats you can wear, the more money you can make. And technology enables that. Genuinely, it does. And open source technology is the free version of that. So if you are worried about overheads because you're a SME agency, open source is your best friend to learn. Like, it's basically like how to make some quick ROI from not having any payment in advance for the technology. And then you may go, well, what's the premium version of this thing? What's the next? Is the open source the best in the market? Or is there a private company that offers something better that I can even get more value out of and more client deliverables and things like that? So that's really how I sort of approach this open source stuff. Is some of the time they are the best in the market, depending on what AI tool or what SaaS tool you're looking at. Other times they're the like biological bootloader for the next thing that you could, learn, and they're the free way to get started in this stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Ben, from your perspective as a creator, what's your view on open source and what Meta are doing specifically?
I've got lots of thoughts in my head now.
Drop them.
Well, I like it because I'm looking at the SAM Everything model they've just released, which is essentially rotoscoping, which for anyone that doesn't know is essentially when you've got a video and you can select different elements of that video and it tracks it over the video and you can, remove it. The simple thing is removing the background, like behind somebody. That's the kind of the basic use case for most people. But, it could be something like a ball or anything really. And generally, the way that you do that at the moment is you would either do it in a program such as like After Effects, or use DaVinci Resolve, or CapCut also offer it. And interestingly, this is kind of also side link to open source. CapCut are starting to paywall all of their features, and one of their main features is background remover, and they've just paywalled that a couple of weeks ago. They've also just paywalled captions as well. You used to be able to use CapCut to caption your videos, and now they've just paywalled that. I think there are a lot of people that are very unhappy, but it all links back to now. I think companies like Meta releasing tech that is traditionally built into video editing programs, now open source. The problem is at the moment is that is really only probably usable by people who are a bit more tech computer savvy. You've got to download a few programs. You've got to, run the code in certain environments. However, my thought going forward is I'm seeing what's happening with Claude recently, and all of the people that are building apps within Claude. Because I'm thinking, well, if Meta start just making all of this sort of like traditional video editing tech free, somebody's got to build a UI on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where then there's going to be a charge, right? The person who builds the front end then can take the charge. But then what if the app no code movement and Claude gets so good that I can just build the front end myself? I don't need anybody, somebody to build a front end on the to support the back end of the open source tech. I can just input the back end into Claude and tell it what I want, and it delivers me a nice front end UI that I can now use to do the rotoscoping.
That might be preferable because you can set it up the way you want.
Yeah, I could do it myself. I mean, this is probably, maybe a year or 2 years away where actually, you can build stuff off complex back end code. But then we get to the point where now, if there's so many tools that are open source, the bigger companies are going to start to become in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm really interested in what that's going to mean for the future of creators. It's good. The prices are going to drop because there's going to be more competition, more free stuff. I've already seen it in the captioning space. The captioning space is very competitive, and CapCut was the only free provider of captions. Everybody else charges. But now with some of the open source models like Whisper, the OpenAI have released, that's just their voice to text transcripting model, language model. People are now building on top of that to build captioning apps, and I've seen ones kind of coming out for free on Product Hunt, where I spend a bit of time looking at what people are building, and so yeah, I think this is going to really happen at scale over the next 2, 3, 4 years if other companies adopt Meta's approach, where they just release open source stuff, and it then becomes easy to build the front end UI, so that actually all you need is a good PC.
Yeah. I'm conflicted with this whole conversation because I believe that the collective sum of all the human ingenuity in the world. So when you open source something and people go create and build, I think amazing ideas will come off the back of it. In the same way we described about social media, this creative renaissance of new ways of expressing yourself. I think the same can be said for technology. The downside is it becomes very much a game of just a few incumbents because, these models to power incredibly expensive. So you start to say, yes, lots of people are building. And what you described there, Ben, around like CapCut are ByteDance are TikTok. They're a commercial business. So they build something, they get wild mass adoption in the hundreds of millions, if not billions. And then suddenly they go, okay, well, we're going to start to commercialize this thing. And be under no illusion that Meta are a commercial beast. Yes, they focused more of their energy away from the metaverse, VR, into their ad products the last 18 months, and they are reaping the commercial rewards. Now, They're using the same kind of, hey, come build with us. We're actually going to be open source. We have the best stuff. We'll pay for it all for now. And at some point, things are going to change. But the overriding thing is you kind of go competition. More people building means more choices. You have to assume that the end user, us, everyone using the technology, ends up being the winner in some way. So like it's a very sort of interesting transition we're going through where forces are competing.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's what I like. Even though I don't like the fact there are lots of tools being built that aren't very good, like over time, there will be winners and losers, and there'll be more winners in a certain category in a year's time than there are today. And that means, just more competition and prices reduced, better innovation, because now, people are building stuff that is on par in terms of use case with the bigger companies, because it's just easier to do now. It's people can do it from the bedroom. And I think, the end user, from my perspective as a creator, will be really good because we're all fed up of just paying for 10 different subscriptions. And I don't know, hopefully one day somebody will build something and just give it away for free that just doesn't give a shit.
Yes.
And just like takes all the open source models, builds something mega and is super rich and goes, you know what? Fuck Meta, fuck Apple, Adobe and all of these, and here you go, here's a tool, it's completely free.
You know who I'm backing to do that? I reckon Jack Dorsey is going to have a psychedelic trip at some point. Some shaman. Yeah, he's 100% going to be the guy that at some point builds something. Because you know what? There you have it. There you have it. I'll tell you a funny story about Jack Dorsey. So I had a friend in New York, worked in one of the clubs, and Jack Dorsey used to go in that club when he was in New York. And he would go in and he would have one glass of champagne, order a champagne, a $20,000 bottle. He'd have one glass and then he'd leave. Like he'd hang around just with one person. He'd take a friend or whoever, a partner, and he'd have just one glass, one sip, or like just one glass, leave. And then, and this is a bit of an internal dialogue, but then all the people used to get really jealous of who was serving Jack Dorsey for the $20,000 tip. He'd leave a $20,000 tip as well. With the host, and everyone would get angry, so they started saying, well, we all have to split it out, but that wasn't the normal rules. So there was all this infighting, and the manager wanted to take the tip. Complete has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but what I will say is Jack Dorsey is a baller and seemingly quite sincere from all accounts.
You know what, I was wondering when we were talking about the Meta stuff, think about the way that when Meta bought Instagram, they monetized Instagram because Instagram didn't have ads, and now every third post on Instagram is an ad. And all of Meta's products throughout time, like Google, have leaned heavily on advertising. The reason I'm bringing this up is because during our live session yesterday, I don't use Copilot, but Copilot's now natively showing ads. Can you believe that? Really? Yes, yeah. It's the first LLM where you go to use it and it's showing like Google ads. I was really surprised to hear that.
I wonder the conditioning, because Meta do ad placements better than anyone. They integrate ads, and it doesn't ruin the experience, by the way. I don't think it ruins the experience, and I think they introduce ad inventory better than any other business. They seem to get the ad load reasonably well. I know you say there's a lot of ads. Yes and no, it still doesn't massively ruin the experience, where most of the companies go the opposite way. And that's been the big question actually around models. In a prompt-based world where we are speaking things into engines, or we are typing them and asking for things, and then we're generating outcomes, one of the without that discovery phase or the ability to add ad placements, that was one of the questions that everyone has. I have to assume you're right. It'll just be the old models of yesteryear introduced into the new technology, right? That's probably
well. I've seen nothing else. Show any sort of like competition to the advertising model, and that is my worry, honestly, because if you're old enough like me to have been in what I would deem Facebook's heyday, like 2010 to 2013, something like that. That's when organic reach was through the roof. There wasn't that many users. And over time, you know, I managed pages with over 10 million followers, and these guys used to get upwards of hundreds of millions of engagements per year. And then this just got taken away. And then it's like, now you have to pay to reach those same followers. So like Ben was saying, like CapCut, it's a very hard thing to give someone for free, like captions, and then monetize it, because they're used to having it for free and doing it this way. And now all of a sudden it's the other way. And like, that's when a new platform will come along and say, look, we're willing to not, you know, we'll give you all the organic reach you want. And then 5 years down the line, they'll do the exact same thing that Meta did, because they get you hooked and then they start to fish, you know, like that's the real way that these guys do it. Is it looks too good to be true in the first few years because they're making a loss and they're just acquiring customers and users. And then all of a sudden, like overnight, it's either a public IPO or they change the business model, or now you have to pay for advertising, and it just gets worse. So like I call that the golden era of a technology, you know, where if you're an early adopter, you can get, I used to pay 1p a click for Facebook ads, man. 1p.
And that's
nowadays that same ad traffic is like £15.
That's the philosophy that really carries front runners. If you want unfair advantages, you have to go where others aren't. And that often means making mistakes, not following a rule book, not doing what your competitors are doing. It's a really good segue actually though, because what you're describing around ad models is my fundamental belief is you never own your audience, generally speaking. You don't own your audience. You spend a lot of time. At any point, the algorithm can shift and penalize you, limit your reach. And you're seeing a counterculture now. Podcasting is one vehicle that people going, you know what, I want to own my audience. It's really intimate. I can spend 30 minutes to 3 hours with people that like to listen or hear what we have to say. And there's this anti-algorithm movement. Ben, as a creator, and one of your primary income sources is brand deals and promoting products and technology that adds value to you. How do you think about this? Does it make you nervous that all this, you know, you're not fully in control? And you had a situation recently where like your second account disappeared. And how do you feel about all this stuff?
Owning the audience, right? Yeah, I think about this a lot because everyone's telling me to build an email list, and I've started to build an email list. I don't like writing. I don't like doing emails. So, and I think a lot of video creators don't, because they do video. Writing isn't there.
Do a video newsletter. That's totally possible.
Could do. Well, it's more like I could do a newsletter where I just post video. I think I have some interesting thoughts around this, because I always get everybody say, oh yeah, like I've made the most money from my email list. Like you need to have an email list. Da, 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 da. But that's because you funneled them from the top to the bottom. Of course, that's going to make you the most money, because that's the people who really love what you do and that. And I'm not saying that that's incorrect, but I would challenge that and say, well, could I make just as much money if I didn't have an email list? Because my true fans who follow me on platform will also convert to what my offer is, however I decide to distribute that to them. So you can't just compare how much you've made from your email list to how much the value of top of the funnel is bringing in, because in my opinion, top of the funnel is more important than an email list. TikTok, because it's top of the funnel. You won't make any money off an email list if you don't have a funnel.
I agree.
And so people are like, oh yes, you need to focus on email list. Email list. I think email list is important, but it's one piece of a massive diversification puzzle that every creator should strive for, and that means all of the big boys: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, X, LinkedIn, you know, and then if you want to do some more other ones, if they're applicable to your niche, you've got Snapchat, you've got Pinterest. I don't have any issue with not owning my data if my data is distributed across all of those platforms. Right. The chance of those all just disappearing tomorrow is very, 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 very unlikely. YouTube is pretty safe. I would say Meta and their properties like Instagram, fairly safe. There's TikTok is the least safe when it comes to obviously individual bans, and then also the ban impending in the US. But like, I just think that, yes, owning your audience is important, but
Why do you say, Ben, just quickly on that, why do you say TikTok is the least safe? What's your perspective on? And I know the
because
US ban is part of the story, but that's the US. But
because their system automated bot thing. I don't know how you define it. The thing that basically looks at people's behavior and makes a decision on whether it's appropriate or not
Auto
is
flagging,
shit.
yeah.
So you can get your account banned very easily if there are known communities that go after creators by mass reporting. If you mass report an account on TikTok, you can get it banned just by mass reporting. My account got banned because I posted a video and deleted it 4 or 5 times in quick succession. It flagged my activity as spam, I believe, because it just thought, oh, this is strange behavior. Why is he doing this? I just made a mistake in the video. I kept making a mistake. And then it perm banned my account 2 days later, and I'm still in the process of trying to get that back. YouTube and Instagram, that happens, but usually not that often. Usually when people are banned on the other platforms, it's usually for a good reason. TikTok, it happens a lot for no good reason. And yeah, that is scary because, on my main account, which is just under 400,000 followers, I have to ask myself, what's the value of that? I don't know what the value of that is. And if that disappeared tomorrow, what is that worth to me, and how detrimental would that be? It would be detrimental to some extent, for sure. I have diversification on other platforms. In my head, I've built the skills that I needed to build to go and make something happen if I need to make it happen at the end of the day. If I want to go all in on another platform, I'll grow on another platform if I really, really had to, push comes to shove. But yeah, I do think owning your data is important, but I also just think it is challenging for lots of creators. It's another thing to think about. It's just another, area that you need to think about content and value and stuff like that.
Can I tell you one thing that I've noticed about TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts is the lack of CTA links you can have.
Yes, that's the main problem. YouTube is the best because you can have it in the description.
Yes, exactly.
But on a short content, you can't CTA off platform, which I guess is then
Very frustrating.
the question of value and driving to offers and affiliate links, etc., which you can do in an email. I get that. I do get that. I mean, you can have link in bio, which is an alternative to driving off platform
as well. That's very similar.
I just think that, like, your true fans, the people that will buy from you, if you've got something to buy and it's not that difficult to find, they'll find it and do it. Whether that's email, whether that's link in bio, whether that's on your website, right? And if you distribute a message that tells them where it is and they want it, they'll go and get it. You don't need an email to do that, in my opinion.
it reminds me,
as of right now, you're having to sell everything offsite, right? There's no like e-commerce shop or anything in TikTok that you can utilize.
Well, they have TikTok Shop. You can sell digital products on TikTok. You can,
really?
Yeah, you can sell.
So they never need to leave the app in order to buy from you?
Technically not, but then you've got to understand that the pricing strategy of a product on TikTok, if it's a digital product, is not going to be high ticket. Right. You won't see many people selling high ticket products. Let's say a digital ebook on how to grow on TikTok, for example. If I were to sell that on TikTok, if I'm pricing that $100, I would get absolutely ridiculed.
And what's the cut that TikTok would take from something like that?
I actually don't know what the cut is, to be honest. I've never actually done it. I would imagine it's probably like 10-20%.
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly good. And for a long time, they were subsidizing. So to onboard, they're actually the Trojan horse for social shopping. Social commerce has been a thing that has existed online in some form. People have tried to build around it, to create around it. TikTok came along again of going, Pinterest was best place. Then Instagram did their shopping feed, never really were able to commercialize their real estate. It was basically a magazine cover for a long period of time, pretty pictures, and they still couldn't do that. And TikTok come along because what they did is they started to win the live feature. And they're the closest thing. And actually, it makes all the sense in the world. They come out of Asia, and Asia have long had social shopping, have been the kind of user case for the globe of going, let's start investing and let's start thinking about all of these spaces. It's really interesting.
What
Have you seen that shopping channel where she's really quickly showing garments on screen on the live like this? And it's like in rapid succession. It's almost entertaining. It genuinely is like a
Entertainment.
reality
Yeah, it's
show meets a shopping channel. It's nuts.
What do you think about TikTok's kind of absolutely rapid acceleration in revenue streams on the platform, and it killing it? So they've got, like, you've got shop, you've got live, you've got paid content, you've got ads, you've got like battling, you've got the split of stuff. They've got UGC programs. They have got so many fucking revenue streams. It's just, in my opinion, it's destroying the platform. And a lot of people complaining about it, but then I think, well, you're complaining about it, but you're still here every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hooked to that dopamine.
Yeah, I think TikTok is really fascinating for a number of reasons. I'll give you a bit of context. There used to be a client of ours for many years. We were one of the lead partners that helped them enter the US, and we were commissioned with driving app downloads. And we used to get these very favorable commissions for every person that we could drive. And our primary user case for doing that, we would do all those cliffhanger videos and we would flood Instagram with like these shocking events, and then like the payoff would happen on TikTok. So you'd never get to see the end of the video. And we worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of young creators and meme pages. And because we got the cost per download down so low, we made a lot of money through that process of driving acquisition on platform. And we work with a number of partners for tracking. What's really fascinating is I've seen their sort of adoption curve as a marketer, as someone when just after Musical.ly was purchased, which then became TikTok.
Yeah.
We used to work with DreamWorks, and they were really interested because Musical.ly was a young person, a child's platform. TikTok, less so. And everybody for a long time would say, it's just kids and animals and dancers. And it was always this thing that everybody dismissed. And I'd say, absolutely, there's a lot of kids and there's a lot of dancing and there's a lot of silliness on there. However, if history teaches us anything, it's that young people drive culture. Young people drive language. Young people drive trends. If you ignore what young people are doing, then you ignore that at your peril. You will miss the opportunity. And I don't have a user case of another fucking insurance company winning on TikTok, but I promise you, reserve some energy for what you said earlier, Chris, around like the uncharted territory of a new platform.
Yeah.
Reserve some energy. And what TikTok did so well, and why they proliferated the internet, is if you go back to that time in social media, it was really difficult to leave Facebook or Instagram, meaning like if you wanted to share something off platform, it was difficult. Yep. What TikTok did is, with 2 clicks, I could download a watermarked video and share it somewhere else on another platform. So where everyone was keeping their audience gated and put all the friction in place to keep you away from platform, TikTok did the opposite. They made it so easy, removed all friction. They had that super addictive For You page that turned, your first video would reach millions of people or whatever.
Yeah, the dream days.
Yeah, all of those things. And what they did is they were the first creator social media platform, meaning you got creator tools. You could stitch, you could duet. None of the other social platforms allowed you to create within it. So I've gone through the history of I've seen them as a hacky, we're going to acquire millions of people in the US because it's an important market. I've then seen the proliferation of like people dismissing them and brands going, yeah, it's kind of just kids. And then seeing the fastest growing audiences being, 40 plus. I think if you look at the data now, over 80% of the platform is over the age of 25. Like, put that into context of it's not a young person platform per se. And then I've seen all the clever features from a UX standpoint. Never mind the greatest, most relevant discovery engine that's ever been built that's super addictive. Combine all those factors and I go, TikTok have won in every conceivable. So when you're saying, Ben, like, you're now seeing that turn where they have invested so heavily. And if I told you what they spent on acquisition in the US. I mean billions. I mean like billions were spent. At some point they gotta pay that nut. That nut has to be repaid. And I think that's what you're seeing now. And to your point is, will people leave? I don't know. Is there a better choice? Where do you go? Where do you go for your dopamine? Do
They
you go
pushed
to
everything
shorts?
to the extreme, didn't they? Like what you've just described has all been done before.
100%. They just
Like,
did it sequentially.
yeah, but they looked at this stuff, right? Like they said, the most addicting thing is to get short form video instantly into the open of the app. That was the thing that they discovered first. Then they realized that the sent by Dropbox, sent by MailChimp thing was a way to get like watermarked versions of things to other platforms. And this has all been marketing practices that they've done before. So what they've done is gone, right, what are the best growth tactics? Buy similar SaaS platforms or any sort of platforms that we can adopt. And how do we push that to the most extreme level there is? So yeah, I don't think a Western company would be willing to go down that route, honestly, because of GDPR and other things. Like TikTok scrapes everything you do on every other app that you're on when TikTok's open in the background. Yeah. That's what a lot of people are unaware of.
Do you know, do you know the irony of that comment I thought the other day whilst I was running? I was in my head preparing my answers to the backlash that I'm going to now slowly get as I do more generative AI content, and the controversy around data and model building and that. And I'm just sat there thinking, as soon as I get a TikTok comment about that, I'm going to say, who the fuck are you to tell me about using stuff that unethically takes people's data when you're on TikTok?
Exactly.
How ironic is that?
Yeah,
like you are here on a platform that, I mean, there's allegations that they are using people's data in ways that people have not agreed to. Yeah. And tell me what the difference is there. Because because it's feeding your dopamine hits. Okay. Like, yeah, okay.
And do you know what else?
Case closed.
This is so crazy because this happened in Facebook back in the day, but it happens more in TikTok nowadays. Is imagine that you were frustrated with this platform stealing all your data and you decide to delete your account and leave. Doesn't matter, because if any of your friends or family are uploading photos and friends of you, then you're still in their system. And there's no way to exit. And this is the problem. So what you could say to them literally, Ben, is you're putting all of your mates' compromised data by leaving this comment. Like, you are literally contributing to the siphoning of data by leaving a comment here in TikTok. All of your friends and family are now less secure with their own data because you decided to leave me a complaint about stealing data. It's really... It couldn't get more hypocritical if you tried.
Yeah, it's impossible in the day that we live in to, I think, be to be super private with your data. I think there are probably people you have to be a super extreme individual in terms of anti all of the big companies to not let anybody be stealing and using your data in ways that you don't want them to. I think it's so difficult.
And honestly, if you guys have seen the Netflix show, The Social Network.
I have seen that, yeah. That's good. That's good. It's really good.
So good, right? They say that in the very beginning, if you're not paying for this, you're paying for it with your data. There is no such thing as free.
You are the commodity, and you're right.
Exactly.
It's what we talk
That's fine, though.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm willing to accept that. Yeah.
I'm willing to accept that. That's fine. I don't know why people are so sort of like, oh my God, I can't believe you're giving your data away.
Yeah. My thing I would hear for a long time, you would hear all these surveys come out in Adland about people really care about privacy. And then they care about their data. And if I ask you directly, do you care about your data and do you want it being misused? You go, yeah. And then I say, look at everyone's actions. If I give you a shiny new toy, you'll give me everything for free. You won't care. And that's okay. So you can tell me all the survey data in the world that people actually care about privacy and data. Their behaviors and their actions tell me a very, very different story. And where we started on this whole process was business models. And I think we've come full circle to say, there is no free lunch. It does not exist at all. I want to go back to business
You know
model.
what though? I would love to know transparency. So talking about that free lunch, if like I was totally aware of who was buying my data inside of TikTok, and I had that like tick cross, like, oh, an insurance company wants it, no. A bank wants it, no. Oh, an e-commerce store, okay. You know, or this, okay. Like, if I had some choice in the matter of how my data was being used, and even got a micropayment in order to give it, yeah, I'd be
That's
so up for that.
that's the utopia
The
that the block.
transparency layer there, though, you know, is just
That's the blockchain. That's the whole
that's very true. Yeah,
movement of the blockchain is
attribution. Yeah,
creating a transferable, transparent, independent, and there's a whole host of social media platforms that are being built on the blockchain. Probably the most famous and most notable is Farcaster, and that's democratized social media. And think of Farcaster as X, formerly Twitter, but with the ability to build protocols on top. Meaning, if you wanted to change your feed, your algorithm, features, you wanted to build this new shopping feature, you could not currently do that on X, but you could do that on Farcaster. And it ends up being this like really interesting co-authored, democratized kind of inventive way to create new interesting experiences for people. So I've been paying a lot of attention to Farcaster. It's very much immersed in Web3 and crypto right now. However, I think a lot of the looking at how Meta's behaving in the world, there is an argument that more and more is going to start to open source, and is there a world where we start to take ownership back? And I say all this, but I just think, does the average person in the street, would they make those choices? Probably not. I don't think people are really like thinking through in a methodical way. And I'll tell you why I believe that. And this is just not just opinion. People still smoke. People still overeat. People still like abuse their body. People still do all of these things knowing they are wrong. And they just go, you know what? I don't care, and they do it anyway. I just don't think as a mass population, we're going to go that detailed and start curating our data. But I like the idea, and I'd probably do the same, but I just don't know if that's the future.
yeah. I mean, as you say, what someone answers in a survey is very different to how they act in real life. Given rewards and incentives and schemes, and we are very pliable. Even it's known, like our own fallacies. I watch lots of psychological podcasts, and they talk about the idea of the negativity bias that we all have. And influencers talk about this one all the time because they can see 100 positive comments and their eyes drawn to the one negative thing. And that's the thing that sticks with them, and then they dream about this and they have issues with this, even though that 99% was positive. We're all drawn naturally to that negative thing. And that goes as far back as us being hunter-gatherers, because if you couldn't identify a tiger in the bush, you were less likely to get eaten, So these are real in-bait things that, since we've been cave people, are ingrained into us. So understanding these psychological principles and then saying that this is the way you're going to answer, and then how it turns out in real life, they don't align. We all have this idealized version of how we would act, but in the actual situation, that's not what pans out.
Yeah, it's behavioral science. That for me is why I love marketing. It's business meets psychology. It's the whole job, if you are a marketeer, is to try and understand people. That's your foundation. Your second job is then to do things that ultimately influence them in a positive way, sometimes in a negative way, but that is the game that marketeers play. It's fascinating.
I'll tell you a really weird example, and I don't know if I should say this because I probably was under non-disclosure when I did it, but I used to work for an agency that used to do something called psychometric marketing. And what they would do is they would do surveys on behalf of big businesses and their customers. So imagine, I won't say the bank, but it was a big UK bank. And we were giving out £150 per survey to come into our office and actually just browse their website. And instead of just leaving them to do that, we put on a skull cap monitoring all of their data. Literally, how's their heart rate? Is their eyes increasing in dilation? All of this stuff, right? So that's the like psychometric side of the data. Now we asked them to fill in a survey right after they browsed the site and said, where were your pain points? Where did you feel like, you struggled with the user experience of this site? And the thing that they answered in the survey was nothing like what aligned to their eyes and dilation of pupils and where they actually got frustrated and stuff like that. So that's where I start to realize, like, yes, it's very intrusive to have that much information, but if someone's willing to pay, £150 and they accept that, then you can truly know where you have like issues with your user experience and, but otherwise you can't get that from survey information because they'll say one thing and not actually know that they don't even mean it.
And it's ultimately why the algorithms are so powerful, because it tells you
Yeah,
things that
100%.
it's the self-image, things you don't want to admit
You couldn't
about yourself.
diagnose your own algorithm. Exactly what you're so spot on with that, because you're like, do you know why? We're all in our monkey brain. We're not truly focusing when we're scrolling through social media and then looking at dwell times and did I share this? And you're not actually there. You're kind of like 30% there. And really you're in this like monkey brain phase.
Well,
so those decisions are almost subconscious and you don't even remember what you're doing. So it's not like you're lying to yourself, it's that you don't even track it.
yeah, and just not. I'm definitely not a neurologist, but I have read the chimp paradox, so I do know the the limbic system, the most emotional part of the brain,
Yes.
processes information 5 times quicker. It's the same
Exactly.
reason than the rational part of the brain. It's the reason that when someone sends you an email that says, "As per my last email," you get triggered. The emotional side of you, the indirects that you receive when you receive those emails, that emotional side reacts first because your rational brain is 5 times slower. And it's the reason why marketeers pursue emotion. It's the reason that, search data is really telling. I always think what people search is the conscious mind, but it's also intentional. It's maybe not the thing that people will say out loud. I think if you were doing any kind of political analysis to try and understand what's happening in the world, I think if you looked at social data in isolation, you'd get a very skewed, flawed picture because it's the most extreme version of everything. I think you get a really balanced view from search because it's the intentional that you're not willing to say out loud, the thing you think, the rational things you think, but may not say. And then you have this third camp, what you're describing, Chris, which is everything we don't like to admit.
Yeah.
The stuff
the things you
that
don't
we
even
do
register.
subconscious. Yeah, you're not even registering those behaviors.
Yeah, like admitting something is knowing it, and not knowing it is very, very different. Like the best tool I've ever seen for this, by the way, and talking about business models, this was a brilliant one. Full circling it a bit here. It's called Hotjar, and it does exactly what you're talking about. It's heat mapping on a site, so they'll give you like, here's 10 of your customers and the way they interacted with your site. Here's where they clicked. Here's where they didn't click. Here's how long they dwelled for. All of that juicy bits of information. Now, you might not even have thought like, oh, they clicked on this image thinking it was a link. And they won't even tell you that because they forgot they did that, Like, this is what I'm saying about it being like not really something you can recall because it was so insignificant. And yet to the actual user experience manager of that website, it's maybe the most important information that you could give them, but you're not even aware of it to be able to give them because you don't realize that, you're just a normal site visitor. You don't know about user experience design and where all these issues can encounter and all these other things. So Hotjar gives you this like clever thing in that they'll let you see a small portion of your audience and then you have to pay to find out more. But you find it so useful from the small amount that they do give you that you will upgrade. So it's like a freemium business model. That's what I call that. It's free and then it's premium. It's never like $10 for this or $10 for that. No, you will give you a small amount of the full value of the tool for free, and then it's going to be thousands of dollars a month for you to be able to continue with this because you should find it that valuable.
Every business model needs to find their Trojan horse. If you're a SaaS business, every technology, there's a feature that gets you mass adoption, and it's usually one thing, and it's overused. It's like when there was the Google Home, the Alexa, when it was this voice movement where everyone said, we're now going to have these things in our house that play music. 98% of user cases, people were building applications and programming, prompts. 98% was, what is the weather, play music. Like, that was 98% of users, right? So that's the free thing. You find your version of the free thing that appeals to most people, but then there's this like valuable thing, and value is always perceived. Doesn't mean it's the most expensive. It's the thing that is perceived to be most valuable. And that's kind of what you're describing, Ben, with CapCut, going, the entire internet is basically removing backgrounds with this one template in CapCut. Now they go, you know what? You're going to have to pay for that. And that's probably been a hell of a cash cow for them, because there's a dependency on it from the entire creator community, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mad.
There is, yeah.
Ben, from your perspective, do you use like data in that way? Chris was talking about like real interesting UX analytics that show you how you're behaving on a website or an application. Do you go that far with your content? Are you like really in the weeds of your data? Drop off, you've said something, re-edits, all that type of stuff?
It's interesting you say that. I had a call with somebody last week around data surveys, actually, similar to what Chris has just talked about. I've got the problem at the moment in that I am somewhat struggling to sometimes convince brands that my influence is of X value. Because a lot of my influence is top of the funnel. It's not trackable, especially because I'm primarily a short form creator, as we discussed. No clicks off platform. Very difficult to convert a user to a paid user on a SaaS tool from a video. They need to be, really wanting that in the moment, and so that's a problem for me, because if brands are tracking me and my value based off of
Attributing a direct sale.
Attribution cost, that's not attributing the whole value. They're placing no value on brand awareness, top of the funnel stuff. So I spoke with a company last week, someone that I met through LinkedIn, about basically running some surveys where someone from my audience answers some questions. They then watch a video of a tutorial that I made on CapCut, and then they answer some questions after. And they're suggesting to me that if the data is positive, that would suggest the influence that my video has had on them towards that brand or that. And that data I could then go and use to justify value to brands, because they're saying that that's how agencies are doing it to brands as well, and that's generally how they have got a more of a corporate approach. They're trying to bring it to creators. They're using me to understand.
Just on that, Ben, I'll tell you why I don't think that'll work.
I don't think it's going to work either.
I mean,
I'm unsure. Right?
I'll tell you why it's not going to work. Is not because like that's not a good indicator that you're influential. Yeah. It won't work because advertising agencies are lazy. The people, they don't want to know the real data. We measure what's easy. A last click is a really easy thing to measure. I'll give you a personal anecdote. A year before we ever met, I saw one of your videos on TikTok, and it was about a podcast setup. I copied that video into my notes, and 6 months later, when I was going to buy some stuff, I typed in my notes, I went, podcast setup. That's what I titled your TikTok video. And I went away and bought £1,000 camera, £200 light. I went and spent well over £1,000 off a video you created on a series of products. Didn't click any of your links, your Amazon links, so I fucked you over.
They pay me. You get fuck all from Amazon anyway. From those links. I'd rather not people. I just tell people don't even use them.
But the point being is that was 6 months later. It's like, I am not ready to buy. The same can be said for all the tools you've promoted. I tag tools in my Notion now. So if I hear someone, because I'm not going to just go off my feed, interrupt my day, whatever I'm working on, and I'm going to stop. But at some point, I'm going to go voice synthesizer, avatar creator. I'm going to do captions. I'm going to start like typing in words to try and find a whole host of tools. And that's the influence you play. And that's like a personal anecdote. And I can extrapolate that across the millions of people that you reach every month and like go, okay, you are creating a lot of value.
Yeah, I'm in the process of building more lead magnets and Notion pages for categories of tools, and also signing up to the affiliate pages of all of those tools. And then I can then collect data on clicks. So in my head, I'm thinking, you just said you're in Notion, you just have like a section that's like Ben's tools, whatever. And then you have like music sites, and you have free and you have paid. And then when you're like, I need to start paying for a paid subscription service, you just go into Notion, you see all the paid ones there. They're all my affiliate links. And then you click on them. And then that way I can collect some data to then go back to brands and say, look, like I've generated this amount for this brand. That's just one of the things
That's definitely their way I'd do it, because like in the advertising agency business, we call this RTB, and that's ready to buy. And like very few people are ready to buy straight away, because let's say that it's a technology tool and it's going to be something that your agency buys or your business buys, then January and April are the most likely windows for that to be acquired, because that's when budgets are renewed financially in a window. So depending on where they are in their year, how much they've spent, you know, they might think you're the best. And what's so strange is that these businesses, that's such a red flag, by the way, is if they want one video to sell a product that no one's ever heard of. As you said, if it's not a brand awareness activity, it's instant red flags, because they only want to pay on per sale, and yet you're having to do the whole education of the thing to get them ready to buy. And
in a 30-second video.
Yeah, well, it's like, you want to sell them a retainer project and go, look, I can do a series of videos for you. The first three are going to be brand awareness, and the second three are going to be on sales funnels, you know, but like, that's the sort of way that you'd have to negotiate back with them. Honestly, it's because many of these brands don't value marketing, and they don't understand influencers, and they just want, you know, easy trackable ROI and attribution without actually understanding. And they're always setting themselves up for failure when they come in with that as demands, you know?
Yeah.
I say you can't micromanage an influencer like that. They know their audience. They know what works. If you're telling them what works, you're already going wrong. Like, it's really bad red flags, that, for me.
This is what will work. Nobody's doing this at the moment, in my opinion. So the whole creator economy and creator-led businesses are all being driven by free lead magnets into email, like we said, email. And brands have email lists. That's where part of their funnel. That's where they sell. So when brands work with an influencer, instead of them saying, "Oh, here's our subscription service, here's 20% off, here's 10% off," they need to build a shit ton of free lead magnets that person has to go to the website to get, that is somewhat related to that service.
Exactly.
So
it's
actually,
that they aren't doing that.
It's all they have to do is build free education in the form of digital products, just like all the creators are doing, which is working very fucking well for creators. And then they leverage that with influencers, with the right audience, to then get them into the email, and then they can start their own sequence. Not many brands are doing this. I've not seen any brands partner with influencers to create a specialist lead magnet alongside the main tool to drive acquisition.
Well, I'm not Gary Vee's biggest fan, but he calls it jab, jab, punch. You know, like that's literally, if you try and punch straight away, you've failed. So like, if you try and sell off the first video, instead of giving like, here's a free download to show how much we know about what you're interested in and how we can solve your problem. Here's another thing that's like, and just a free educational tip or something, you know, like an email. And then now I recognize why these guys do it and why you're less keen on it, Ben, now that you've explained it, right? They're not confident that they can reach the top of the funnel consistently viral, and they know a guaranteed email will reach someone's inbox. So like, that's why they can't try and push people into an email, because that's a guaranteed send. Versus your posts, you know, it is live or die by the algorithm, but you're so good at it that you can consistently back yourself to be there, whereas they don't back themselves. You know, like that's the difference.
But
they want guarantees, brands. They don't want algorithms might kill your post that you spent 10 hours on and get nothing for it.
But this is what happens though in influencer marketing and spend, is that they put all of their eggs in this organic basket, and an influencer posts a video that's an ad and it does absolutely shit, and they get no return on it because they're just not offering enough value. Like, it's just
It's
like,
always about having the right intentional strategy. So it's well understood that if you want to have creator content that works well, you give as much creative freedom to the creator, because they know their audience better than you as a brand ever will. They know what they like, what they don't. You become familiar with certain formats, etc. A brand's job in that is to think, how do I make the most of this moment? So, for example, with Ben, what you're describing is very well understood performance marketing. There are two destinations that have the biggest consequence on your paid media. The algorithms today do a really good job of having content reach the right people and doing that as pretty efficiently.
yeah,
The two things you have control over is input, the ad, the creative that goes into the ad, and then the destination, the landing page. What you're saying is, really, if you're going to do a creator program, you should have a strategy behind it, where I'm going to do a custom relationship with Ben. It's going to be over 3 months. Every 2 weeks, he's going to give a new kind of like gated piece of content, and I capture your email. It's then
yeah.
my job as a marketer. It's not your job to sell them. It's about all the behavioral science and all the follow-ups and the retention marketing, and actually building something of value and getting the feature set right, where certain features are free, certain ones are paid for. That isn't the job of you as the creator. That's the job of the marketeer and the business themselves. And I think too many people just go, creator marketing, it's your job to sell me shit, Ben. It's not your job. Your job is to bring them attention. It's their job to think of what you've just described there. And that's why there are just so many lazy marketeers.
I completely agree. And it's like, I've written down here is that, like, from an influencer, like a measurement perspective of performance, is that how many influencer marketing people or brands would they 100 sales or 10,000 emails? That's the question, and that they're just some arbitrary numbers that I've made up there, but that is it, right? It's if I do a video on a SaaS product and there's no sort of lead magnet, there's no sort of incentive to sign up. It's you've got to sign up and pay, right? And let's say I drive 50 sales from my video that are trackable, and then there's lots down the line that's not that trackable. However, if I go with a lead magnet approach and I'm giving something big away for free, like a downloadable thing that's related to that service and solves a pain point, and I get them 10,000 emails instead, and maybe don't get as many sales, maybe get 5 sales, like, that, in my opinion, is gonna be a better ROI over time, because they'll be able to then put those 10,000 emails into their funnel, and they'll be able to then track those eventually when they buy, and that can be brought back to me.
Yeah.
But if there's no free lead magnet, I am significantly reducing the amount of people that sign up and are willing to give their email away, because they don't want that thing now.
They can then do a direct comparison too, because they can go, what's the value of an email to us?
Yes, this is what I'm saying. What is it?
How would we acquire that any other way? You'd have had to run a PPC targeted lead, which would have cost £14 a click. Then they would have converted and downloaded the same white paper. But did those guys go on to buy the product, or did the ones that came from you and organic social actually go on, more frequently to buy the product? In which case, the value of your email is 3 times the value of a PPC email.
The honest answer, though, guys, is it depends. Because you're looking at it from a perspective as a creator of, I want to get the value I'm creating. And there's some value that's easy to capture, and there's many aspects of value that are difficult to capture and evidence and attribute. I say it depends because those 10 sales, Ben, might be the difference between them getting a fundraise or not in that particular quarter. Like, it might be consequential. Or it might be that, they have a really thoughtful plan for activating an offer that's about to come up. So the data in the email list is way more consequential. The answer in always marketing is it depends. And the problem you have between the kind of creator economy and brand marketeers is there's too much lazy influencer marketing. It's like, I'm just going to work with Ben. He's got to come up with some creative and
Way
do it.
too much.
It's just lazy. It's like, reach out, I'll pay you whatever your fee is, go, and then I'm underwhelmed because I'm not putting intention into what I want. But if you had a dialogue and I said to you, Ben, right, 10 sales are really important to me. Let's co-author how we get those 10 sales. Let's come up with an idea that's relevant for your audience. You'd have a few cool ideas based on that, but it's all about intention, and not enough marketeers put it into their work.
Yeah. Oh, I'm crying inside because it's just it's so obvious to me what you said. It's just like laziness. Like, let's just pay Ben to make a video or pay X influencer rather than going, what do your audience
and care? That's why.
What do your audience like? What do they like? Kind of, what do they, what's, in your all of your videos that you've done previously, like for me, from a SaaS creator perspective, and they like free stuff. Anything that's free that solves a pain point, anything that's free that people desire, that's what people want. And so I would love for a brand to come to me and ask me that question, and I go, right, these are all the things that I know my audience love the most. This is a long list. This is what you do. Which one of those makes sense? Okay, this one makes sense. I want you to go and build this out. Build some free stuff here, some free lead magnet stuff, and this will come into the video as well. So we can drive those emails and the sales as well. And you're giving away stuff for free. But our brands just don't want to put the effort in to do this. But honestly, I'm seeing the way that I see creators operate in terms of driving sales to their bottom of the funnel. Brands are just not doing it. Brands need to pay attention to what creators are doing, because creators are winning in the creator business because they know how to market to their audience with free stuff to the bottom of the funnel, and brands are too busy trying to just use influencers to go straight to the bottom of the funnel.
They're the best.
Completely wrong, in my
dumb,
opinion.
isn't it? Your two goals as a brand approaching an influencer should be unattributable brand awareness and data capture.
Yes.
They should not at all include sales. That should just be a lucky thing if someone's ready to buy, which is 1% of the time, and they're going to make the leap after one educational video. That's literally like winning the lottery. You know, did you see the Snoop Dogg activation with the smokeless fire pit?
No.
Those guys reached out to Snoop and said, look, we want you to be the brand ambassador for this. We're going to pay you millions. And then the guy literally came out and said, look, we didn't sell as many fire pits as we want, so we would call this like a waste of time. And I'm like, brother, you just got your brand associated with Snoop Dogg. Do you know what that will do in the next 3 to 5 years if you didn't come out and be a dick about it? Like, that's the dumbest shit you can say, is you didn't sell many fire pits. You got Snoop Dogg to rep for your brand, bro. Yeah, that's insane.
You know, the important thing in that is we're assuming everything's equal. And like, Ben, there's a way more cost-effective way for me to get an impression through paid media.
Yes.
However, I don't have your authentic vouch that this is cool. There's a big difference between you saying something's good versus me just dropping an ad. Even if you're featured in the ad, right? As a creator, there's a disparity between paid attention and earned attention. And when you talk about something, you've built an audience that trusts you. You have integrity to only speak on things that you actually think and actually like and actually care about. And that has to be way more valuable. So if the problem you have in the sector is a lot of creators, don't know how to price themselves. Brands don't know what they should be paying, because the measure is someone goes, hey, I want 10 grand. And then you go, okay, well, that might be what they're willing to do. That doesn't mean it's worth 10 grand. Conversely, someone may say, I want £1,000 and they're worth 100,000. Like, we're assuming everything's equal because we like binary responses in marketing. And going back to all this whole equation is it's behavioral science. Things are not equal. Things are all different. And there are too many variables and factors. And I'm sure for you, Ben, it creates so much frustration as a creator. But I understand it because I've been on the inner walls of Adland forever. And being in the space for so long as a buyer, there's just not enough people that are being very open and honest about these different agendas, right? It's like...
Yeah, no, I agree. There's just another little tactic that I would do. I'm just chucking in everything here. This is what I would do if I was an influencer marketing agency or a brand. I would find somebody who's a macro creator within that niche, and I would bring them on as a consultant to pick the other influencers. There might be, some favoritism here, but the problem is that brands and agencies think they understand the niche when they don't understand the niche that well. You can only understand the niche when you're doing it. Super, as in like, I know the difference between all of the creators that are similar to me. They are exceptionally nuanced differences. But someone will look at me and go, oh, you just make tutorials and tips and that. They'll look at someone else, oh, I just make tutorials and tips. But I'll be able to pinpoint based off of watching the content of that influencer day in, day out to know exactly how they are slightly different than me. If you then if you want to attack a niche, you find an influencer that you think is pretty switched on, you consume their content, you go, yeah, this person seems right. You get them to basically talk about how all of the different influencers are slightly different and which ones they think would be appropriate for this product or service based off the nuances in that, and that will then drive better results. There are too many marketing and influencer agencies generalizing niche creators because they don't understand the niche, and that then leads to the wrong product or service being promoted with the wrong influencer due to a slightly different nuance, and that leads to bad results. That is, I'm not asking somebody to do that. That's forward thinking. It's a risk. It's something that I know that would work because I could do it for an influencer brand agency. Because I look at
think of the value of that too, because that's what they do. Is there's multiple ways to say this: spray and pray method. That's one of the things I've heard it being called. When you get 5,000 influencers, you give them all the same brief, you don't get to understand them, and you just hope that one of them will hit a jackpot. Then there's, throw as much spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. That's the other method. But in both of those cases, you are chucking 95% of your money down the drain in order to gamble that 5% will pay off. Whereas if you play the consultative role and made them, what you should do then? You should say, instead of taking a flat fee for this, I'll take a percentage of the savings that I make you by getting you the right influencers. So I don't want to charge you a $5,000 fee to get you the best influencers. I want their performance to be relative to how much you pay me, because then you win big when they win big.
That's a more lucrative business model that I don't know whether brands would be willing to accept that.
Well, if they are burned before in the past, I guarantee you they will. If they say, look, last time we approached this, we tried 50 grand's worth of micro influencer outreach and we hired 500 people and we got very little back, then you can go, give me that 50 grand and I can tell you the ones to get. And if that turns into 500 grand, I want 10% of that.
You know why I think it's genius beyond the obvious as well, of sound advice? I would argue if you're in partnership or working and curating, a list of 10 people that you have maybe a relationship, you certainly have admiration for, you're doing similar things, you have shared common ground. I imagine you'll be able to, not that you're negotiating on behalf of brands, but people are much more willing to engage on favorable, fair terms. Because that's the whole point in this. It's always about trying to find the sweet spot of equality. I want to
they'll be much more like you, right? It's creators talking to creators. It's not businesses talking to creators. You're not only that, but as Ben said in the top of the funnel, these guys don't leave the platform, right? So if they see you with a good TikTok account and you're approaching saying, look, I can hook you up with this brand, they're going to look at your profile and go, this isn't someone wasting my time. This isn't someone with 10 followers that represents a SaaS brand. This is a big influencer giving me a big influencer contract.
And there we go, chaps. Ben is offering his services.
The middleman, Ben.
If you're selling, £30 an hour, I heard. The man is in. Bargain.
Oh, it's
Bargain,
just
Ben.
It's so obvious. It would cost people not even that much money as well, because influencers don't charge that much money anyway. You could probably pay somebody
bargain them,
if they've got a 50 grand budget, spending a couple of grand on an influencer to come in and basically look through maybe a pre-vetted list and go, no, yes, no, and then actually go, no, I would replace this person with this person, and then for a couple of £1,000, you've now just got an optimized list. And it would be in the best interest of that influencer to not just pick their friends, but to pick people that are going to perform well, because I want repeat business. This is about me. This isn't about my influencer friends getting more bag. Like, it's about me showing that I'm delivering a service that performs, so they come back to me. And so I will not pick people just based off favoritism. I will pick people who are going to get results, who I think will get results, and the brand will get results. And just
Ben,
you know, the sad thing too is micro influencers never have been approached this way usually. So
no, they haven't. They've never been approached this way. Honestly, I'm so passionate about this because there's just a lack of innovation in influencer marketing agency, because all of these agencies just think they know what they're doing and they don't.
You're making me feel like a genius. I'll go back 6 years, Ben. We used to have creators come around the table when we had big pictures, and we'd pay them to sit in our creative sessions with us and just come up with ideas, because they were better than us at social ideas, and we were the best, right? We were phenomenal at what we did. Creators were better, and we were the only company, I imagine, probably doing that. I remember a time of what you're describing, shouting down the phone to Pretty Little Thing and saying, like, have a Kardashian as your creative director. This is 7-8 years ago. We're like, it's going to be worth its weight in gold for two reasons. One, the name value, and it's like different in industry, and it certainly was at the time. And then they went on to do Molly May a few years later or whatever. But we also, it's aspirational to everybody that admires this person at the top of the funnel. They want to be through association. So the intrinsic value is way more greater than the fund, the reach. We're trying to create people. It's like, consider this, your briefing process. When I come to you, Ben, and have a dialogue and say, I want to work with you as a brand, I'm asking you to co-author a brief with me. I'm asking you then to go create a video. I'm then asking you to put your name and reputation and image that you've spent the last 5 years building. And then I'm only measuring your success on your audience. We look at that one bit and go, your audience is the only thing you're contributing to this process. You're a full stack creator doing everything. So that's where I think one of the biggest underpinnings, that is where it's one of the reasons the industry goes wrong, is measuring by media metrics only. That's a big problem.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's lots of problems there. I've got so many ideas in my head around that, about why it's valuable to have a creator-led list of other influencers for that niche. Because as well, and this is just one last point I want to make, within every niche, everybody within that niche has a very good understanding of how everybody feels about other creators based off the content they create and the way that they do it, and respect. Different people have a different amount of respect from other creators based off the content they create, the way they hold themselves, etc. And I think that's really hard to understand from an outside perspective. I could list up 20 creators similar to me, and I could put them in a line of who's respected more than everyone else. And I think that would be pretty accurate if you got other people to do it as well. Obviously somewhat subjective, but it also adds to that insider knowledge of, actually, even though you think this person's content is really good, actually it's not that good. It's not that good. It's because they're in my creator education niche. There are people that do growth education, and I've seen brands work with them, and I'm thinking everybody fucking hates this person because they do it in a certain way. Well, not everybody, but they're not as trusted as other individuals.
Name and shame. Let's
No, I'm not.
I'm joking.
I'd love to because it's annoying. But
I'm joking. On that note, gents, this has been a fun episode. We talked about open source technology, creators, who's scamming who, brands, creators, media metrics, you name it, we did it. Anyway, chat soon.
Sweet.
Cheers.
Perfect. Bye.